Let's start off by discussing who this class is for. Well, if you've just graduated college and you're going into program management and you're a beginner, this is a great way to break into program management. However, if you're a seasoned professional, there are a lot of tools and best practices in this class for you to fine tune and accelerate your career. Or if you are a seasoned professional but you're currently struggling to manage a program, I think we get a lot of benefit from a lot of the tools and best practices in this course. All right, so when I made the program management framework, my goal was to provide you with the best practices on really how to systematically execute as a program manager. Now, there are a lot of approaches out there. This is a framework I created that I use to bring my programs across the finish line. And if you're working with a program manager and they're very effective and they have a totally different approach, that's good because they will be a great resource if you get stuck and they'll have a different way of thinking and approaching problems. All right, let's talk about what is program management. Well, the principal role of program management is really to deal with uncertainty and take this uncertainty and deliver a valuable product or service to customers. Now remember, customers can be both internal or external. And if you kind of look at the ecosystem of program management, on one side you have product management. And what product managers do is they deal with the end-to-end product lifecycle, including development, product launches, pricing, revenue optimization, and even sunsetting a product. And on the other side, you have operations. And operations, what they do is they run the product or service. So the program manager pretty much sits in the middle, right? They take the vision of the product management team and then release the product or service to customers through operations. Now, keep in mind, this is a very simplistic model, and as you know, some or most operations teams, they do have program managers, but I just kind of wanted to bring home where program management sits between operations and product management. Before I change topic, though, I want to do a note kind of on project management. Now, project management pretty much focuses on, I think, what they call the triangle, which is timing, scope, and resources. And what they do is they take objectives, get agreement, and deliver those objectives, right? Because success for a project manager is when these objectives are accepted according to agreed upon criteria from other teams within the time, scale, and budget. So as a program manager, you are going to have to do probably a lot of project management work. All right, so there are different levels of program managers. If, for example, you've just graduated college and you're entering as a program manager at a company, you'll probably start off doing a lot of tactical work, troubleshooting, documentation, and reports. But the important thing is when you're just beginning is really this is where you start building your skill set for working across teams. And if you're lucky and you have a good manager and good sponsors, you might even be able to release a feature in a product or service. Then as you become more mid-level, senior level, this is really where you become a subject matter expert for any product or service that you manage. So you really need to be able to understand when customers come to you with their complex problems, and you need to be able to advise them on how to move forward. And by this time, when it comes to working across teams, you should be very, very good at articulating the value of those other teams working with you. And then when you get to the highest level, which typically is around a principal or partner program manager, This is where your business acumen really needs to come out, right? You really need to focus on short-term and long-term strategy. And also you need to be more proactive. Whereas when you're starting out, you can be less proactive and more reactive. And you have to really understand customers and be able to proactively work with them and identify what's going on in the industry and complexities and be really innovative in your solutions. So as you see at the top of the slide, when it gets down to it, program managers deal with ambiguity, and when you're just starting off, you're at entry level, you should have very little ambiguity, but as you mature, the ambiguity will get greater and greater as your career progresses. All right, let's talk about the topics that I plan to cover in the program management framework. We'll start off by talking about who's who in the zoo, and this is really a way that you get to understand the players and their goals. Then we'll talk about who's on point for what, and I'll introduce a tool called RACI, which stands for Responsible, Accountable, Consumed, and Informed. Then I'll talk about ways for really understanding your program, and I'll talk about a tool called VSEM, which stands for Vision, Strategy, Execution, and Metrics. Then I'll talk about the value proposition, right? So you really need to understand why your customers care about your product or service. Then I'll talk about ways to really make sure how to get everybody on board for your program. Then we'll talk about what's the marketing mix, which is usually delivered by product management or marketing, and you need to understand how your program will get promoted. Then I'll talk about a tool called the Lean Project Pathway, which is a great way to start a program, especially if you're taking over for somebody else. Then we'll talk about creating V-teams or virtual teams so you can get more things done in a shorter amount of time. I'll talk about really how to really promote your program and aligning it to leadership when I talk about the balanced scorecard. Then I'll talk about ways to really understanding if your program is being successful, but I'll talk about the voice of the customer. And then I'll talk about what if you leave or you move on, and documentation is really important. Then I'll talk about a communication rhythm because you want to make sure you have great communication throughout your program. Then I'll talk about the handoff to operations. Then I'll talk about really describing what your program is to the customer with a service catalog. And then finally, I'll end with how to deal with some challenging colleagues. All right, so the first episode is over. We talked about the goals of this class, that I created this framework. It's my approach, but it's really best practices and how to execute as a program manager. Then I talked about the different levels, how when you're starting off, you'll do more tactical work. As you move to senior level, you become a subject matter expert for the product and service you're working on. And then at the highest level, that principal partner level, you really need to understand the business, and you really need to focus on the business 5 years out and have strong business acumen. And the scale of ambiguity changes as you move up. Then I talked about the 15-step process and tools that program managers should use. And I didn't mention this, but you need to remember that you don't necessarily go step by step in all these. You might be working on these a lot simultaneously. All right, so next we'll talk about who's who in the zoo. I'll go over the RACI that I talked about. We'll create an example program, and then we'll go through RACI example. Hey Tigers, that concludes our first episode of the Program Management Framework. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and keep learning. Take care of your health and help your colleagues succeed.